Next one we're going to move to is mirror. Mirror is super useful for if you have something complex or intricate that you've drawn and you'd just like to flip it, or if you've already drawn something a certain way and now you need to flip it for whatever reason. Say you flip a wall or which direction it needs to be, or you accidentally did something. Mirror, rather than just rotating something, actually reflects over a line. So I drew something that's more complicated, that has a bunch of bits and pieces that you wouldn't want to necessarily have to redraw. So a handful of trees and part of a pool, all of those things. So I was nice enough to lock this for you so that you don't have to worry about it. Mirror, the same as any of the other modification tools. You can either select all the things first and activate the command, or vice versa. You can activate the command, then select them. I'll do the command first just to switch it up. So I'm going to type in mirror. MI is the short for it. Enter. Now it prompts you and says select the objects. So you can select individually, or you can use your big window box. So I'm just going to use my big window box because there's a lot of pieces here. So click on the right hand side to get that big green, and click once it's all highlighted inside of it. And see, it still says select objects, so it needs to know when you're done clicking things and you've selected everything you want. I'm going to say yes, enter. That's how I move on to the next thing. And now it says specify point of mirror line. It doesn't matter if you choose top or bottom for whichever part of the line you choose first. Make sure you've got your endpoint snap on so that you're accurately mirroring over. If you notice, if you don't use your endpoint or something like that, if you were to zoom in, you would see non-meshing up lines. They would overlap or have a gap between them. If you didn't have this fun guideline, you would use something like the edge of the pavement here and snap to this edge of the pavement if you knew it was perfectly vertical. But I provided a nice line to snap to for this one, just so the visual. So my first point, click the bottom. You don't have to click the bottom. And you'll see it provides a nice little copy. And very similar to the pivot point of rotate, it needs to know where that guideline goes. So I'm going to click straight up and click on the endpoint again. And it says erase source object. If you say yes, it obliterates all the line work of the thing that you did the first time. So that's if you've made a mistake or something, you want to just flip the whole thing, then you flip the whole thing and then get rid of the last thing you've copied. And then if you say no, obviously you get to keep it and it makes a perfect mirror image. So I'm going to select everything again, mirror. I'm going to choose from the top this time. Doesn't matter as long as it's on a line of reference. Click again for the endpoint. And this time I'm saying, no, don't erase my stuff. And now I have a pretty pool plaza thing. Extend and trim. By the way, if you are moving ahead of what we're doing, totally awesome. Feel free to knock these things out and then move into the assignment as well. You've got the instructions for it. Try and do it within the class so that you get the opportunity to ask questions when we do break for time to work on the assignment and everything. But you can follow just like the original PDF. Each of these commands that are in here do have a link that take you to Autodesk's website to tell you how the command works. So if you're ahead of the game and you want to figure out a command without needing me or Jess, then that is the way to go. So this next one is extend and trim. This one is very, very useful for the laser model that Alec is going to have you cut, the context model for Studio. So pay attention to this so that you know what you're going to be doing later for that. This tool is going to be the main tool that you're going to be using to modify the line work that he provides to get to that, okay? So extend and trim is basically just cutting lines or extending them to a given reference point. So the rectangle, you see this is what it's supposed to look like. You're going to be given more irregular sized or shaped objects for future stuff, but just for simplification here. So we're going to start off by just typing in the commands. So I'm going to go with it. We need trim first. So we're going to do trim, type it in. If you see it's got little scissors, because that's what it does. It cuts up stuff. So let's see if it gets mad at me. Yeah. If you just activate the command as is, it looks at all the line work that you have and considers every one of those lines a reference point for cutting. So if I hover over any line, it gets a big red X, and it'll cut it to the next line. That starts getting very problematic whenever you've got a ton of line work in a file. You don't want it looking at all the lines, you just want it for the ones that you want to look at. So instead, you want to select your reference point for, I'm gonna do Control Z to undo those things. You wanna select the reference items first. So I'm gonna choose this rectangle. That's the only thing I wanna cut any of these lines to, so that's the only thing I'm gonna select first. Then I'm gonna type in trim. Trim, enter. Now, everything I click, so if I click the rectangle, it only breaks itself. It doesn't break to the contours. It doesn't snip in between contours. It only breaks to itself because it's the only reference point. You can use an individual click, single click, and it will break it to this rectangle. Or you can use the big selection window. So if I go click and do, it has an imaginary window, and cross any of these lines, those all go. So I can select tons of lines. So if I draw from here all the way straight up, and click, it's anything that the line that I just drew selects over, it trims it up to the edges. And this one is a little bit, has a little bit smaller pieces to it on how to be efficient and how to understand how it works. So if you need help or anything, let us know. So you'll select all of these things so that you end up with a perfect square. If you select anything on the inside, it is going to still trim it to the outside. So you don't want to lose contours, so make sure you don't select things on the inside. Okay. I'm going to stop there, and then I'm going to show the next one. This one I didn't actually set up in here because I'm dumb and didn't think it all the way through. So I'm gonna. That's the best way to do this. I'm gonna have you all draw lines for this one if you want to practice it. So trim is more important for your context model versus extend. You will not need as much for your context model, but I'm gonna do a copy of this square real quick. So CO. Enter, and I'm going to select the corner, move it, and select. Then I'm going to draw just a random polyline in the middle. So PL, enter, and just draw, but not complete it or go anywhere. If I want the line to go all the way one direction to the other, all the way to the outskirts of the square, I select the square and use the extend command. It does the complete opposite of trim. So if you get trim, then this is reversed. It extends your lines out to a reference point. It's like a giant cookie cutter, and it works both ways. The weird part is these commands work with each other in sync. That's why they're listed together. If I start the extend command, so if I have a line that's sitting in between both, if I start extend, for instance, X, enter. Oh, I need to select my reference object, so that's silly. So I'm selecting my reference object first, then extend. If I hover over any given point that's willing to extend, it's going to extend if I click it. But say I want to trim this one. You don't have to leave the extend command. You can hold shift and it turns into trim. And the same thing happens when you're in the trim command. If you hold shift, it will allow you to extend to your boundary. So now that big X shows up when I hold shift. And I can click and now trim something. So these commands kind of work vice versa and within each other. Biggest one you need right now is trim. But the extend will help later on with just any type of line work that you want to extend out and go to a specific point. That helps. Anyone have any specific questions on that one or running into anything?
So how do we highlight the box?
Yes.
And then it just instantly won't go. Yeah.
So yeah, whatever item that you select first, think of it as a giant cookie cutter at that point. It is the line that either the dough sits on the outside or the inside that you are choosing to remove the outside or the inside, depending on if you're using trim or extend or which way you're using trim. But yeah, think of it as like dough in a cookie cutter. So I'm going to choose my cookie cutter first. Then I'm going to start my trim command. Now I can choose to take the dough out from the middle of the cookie cutter, or I can take it from the outside. So I want to take it from the outside to leave a cookie. Then I select all the lines on the outside and it will cut to the cutter. Does that make sense? Does anyone need some time for it? Sweet. Let's see.
We're returning this, right? Not extending it.
What?
Not extending this.
No. That was my bad. I should have made something to where you got to practice that better. And that was my bad. But thankfully trim is the more important one right now. Okay, I'm gonna move to RevCloud. So RevCloud is also referred to as revision cloud, is what it's short for. And it's typically used in the profession to mark when a revision or a change has been made in a construction document. Yep, sorry.
Did you do that in the place then? There's a people here who live in the,
Okay,
sorry.
that one's not required. Okay, I'll do it real quick. So I'm gonna take the square over here, just as the reference, select it. I'm gonna do copy, CO, enter, select any point, and move it over here.
Yeah, so-
Click. And then I'm going to just draw a random polyline in it. So PL, enter, click, click. So same cookie cutter concept. I want the dough to think of it more like water for extend. The water pour in, you want it to go out to the edges. So I'm going to choose the boundary again and do extend, enter, and then select the thing that I want to be drawn outward. So it works on each end of a line as well. It considers the two separate ends as separate entities whenever you use that command. And if your line goes past it, in the extend command, if you hold shift, hover over, it removes something, and it works the same way for trim. And if you need to practice that and play with it on the side, feel free to do that outside of the assignment stuff, and you can ask questions and stuff as you run into things. So I'm going to do RevCloud now. Okay, so like I was saying, the revision cloud is to mark when changes or revisions have been made in a construction document set. So whenever you've sent out a set to somebody and you say, hey, this is our documents, this was what you build, and then they find things in the field and they're like, nah, this isn't gonna fly, we need to make adjustments based off of a site condition or something, and you go and change a detail or change something in your plan, then a big cloud gets put over it in AutoCAD, and it gets marked as a revision formally so that everyone knows, hey, when did this change and what changed in this construction set. But it is very useful and nice for drawing fluffy vegetation and things in AutoCAD for inventory diagrams, or just marking things out, or using for tree symbols and that kind of stuff. So for RevCloud, there's a bunch of ways to enter. You can either draw with it. So we've been using modify commands so far. This is both a drawing tool and a modification tool. So you can either start the command and modify existing line work. So I can draw a shape or something and make it be a cloud, or I can draw a cloud from scratch. So we've got a couple of instances where you have to do those. So I'll start with this one. You can either select before or after. So RevCloud. And it is never fully, I don't know if typing in the whole word. Did you spell it right? Yeah. So it has to be RevCloud. Don't type out the whole thing. You don't want to type out the whole thing. So RevCloud. Then for the first one, this is going to be an object because it's something that's already drawn. You're not drawing anything. And this is saying specify the first corner point. That's to draw something. You want to apply this revision cloud to an object. Thing with RevCloud is once you've kind of done it, it modifies the line work to a point of no return. So you need to set your settings for it in advance. So if you move past object, you get down to style and arc length are the two things that you're going to be modifying. So if you look in this list up here, arc length has a minimum and a maximum. And then the style for this one needs to be set to normal. And then you choose your object after that. So we're going to start off with our arc length. So you can either type A, enter, or click it. Arc length, You've been prompted to do an 8-foot minimum and maximum. So we're going to type in 8. So if you look down at the command prompt bar, it's asking you for that number. It's currently set to 8 point something really arbitrary. So I'm going to type in 8, enter. And now approximately, perfect. And then I'm going to go to,
Hey, Nat?
Yep.
So up here, we don't, often we're only getting approximate.
what?
Like when you go into ArcLink, it's not saying set min, set max. It's just saying like.
That's what mine, that's also what mine said.
Oh,
So we'll see. I'll figure it out as it
Okay.
goes.
okay.
Try it out. Because if you select the object first, I'm pretty sure there's no going back at that point. Yeah, there's no going back at that point. So we're going to start with this one. So we did our arc length is 8. And if you needed to check your arc length, you can select this again. And if it says 8, you can just push enter and it'll bypass it again. So you don't have to freak out and start over the command or anything. And then style. That one needs to make sure that it says normal. So if it's already set to normal, you can push enter or you can click it again. Normal. And then at that point, now we need to apply it to our object. And like Jess said, it said approximate right now. We can place it on the object and then maybe use a polyline or something to check to make sure it's correct. So object, now it says select the object. So we're gonna hover over our circle as it highlights, and click once. Then it gives you an option. It says reverse the direction. So if you wanted to invert which way those clouds go, then you say yes. This instruction set says say yes. So it goes from clouds and then goes yes, and it flips it inside out. I believe this is not what it should be. So, yep, cool. Pretty sure this one's supposed to be uniform. So let me check the other settings to make sure I haven't screwed up anything. Arc length, object, style. That's really weird. Oh, it says it here. It says it in the list. It's not letting me change it. That's really kind of it. Specify approximate arc length. Good. I'll look into that for learning purposes, I guess. Great. So whatever you've produced based off that 8, if it looks close enough to this, which I think most of y'all does. Did anyone get a uniform like perfect? No. Why does it choose to do this now? Really cool. Okay.
So no one up here got the perfect either. We have one student, it makes like an eyeball shape. And for the life of me, I'm not sure why.
A what?
It looks like an eyeball.
Oh, that means the arc lengths weren't set at all.
No, I watched. We went through it and set it 8 feet. So not sure what's going on there, but maybe we can save it for the end and then work on it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not gonna do troubleshooting for it right now, but I think most of y'all got this, right? Yeah, something that looks like this. Great. We're gonna roll with that for right now. So go ahead and make an attempt at this one. Let's see. RevCloud arc length is 5 feet. The style is calligraphy. Calligraphy basically just means it's like fat on one end and gets short on the next of each line segment. And then object, given the square, so same one, but not reversed. Cool. So I'm gonna go through it. You guys could make an attempt at it. So RevCloud, enter arc length. Rude. Enter. I don't understand that. That's gonna drive me bonkers. So 5, enter, that's what I input. I'm gonna go to style and choose calligraphy. And then I'm gonna choose object, my last one, and select the object. And reverse is no. You can see this is kind of like fluffy hedge looking vibes. This kind of looks evergreen-ish, you know. So different uses for that one. Next one, this is where you get to draw it from the command rather than selecting the object. So I'm gonna start rev cloud, not revolve. Enter. And I'm gonna still set all of my settings first before doing it. So arc length. I'm gonna be bitter every time I put in a number here. 4, enter. And then what's it say? Style. I'm gonna put my style. So then after you've got your style and your arc length set, then you're going to go to this one wants a rectangle or a square, rectangle, tomato, tomato. So you're going to choose rectangular. Then you're going to specify your point. So specify the first corner. So I'm going to click once, one of these corners, and drag to the center of the next one. So make sure you either have your midpoint, or I think only midpoint's working for that one. It depends on how I made this across. So midpoint snap needs to be on for it to snap to it. So your O snaps at the bottom. I reached my O snaps. And you're gonna snap to this last cross to get a fluffy little box. Cool. Last one, you're gonna do a freehand crazy fluff, which would resemble some like inventory plan looking thing, or if you're making maybe section looking trees, those kind of deals. So rev cloud, enter. We need to set all of our settings first. I'm so annoyed. I'm in a maximum. So you know how this drop down box that tells you everything you've ever done, it says that there's a minimum arc length and a maximum. It just does as it pleases. It makes, I think it's taking the average of my number. So specify the arc length. Let's put 4, I guess. As long as it's 4, 2, or something in between, I guess it should be chill. So we've set that, and then we didn't choose a style, so whatever style you'd like, whichever one you're drawn to. Play with calligraphy just for the fun of it. Freehand is the tool that you want to use. So freehand lets you use it almost like a polyline tool. So every time you click, it's a new point. So you can just click, and you click, 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 and it makes whatever. Draw your initials, do fun things. Anything to input in there. Once again, I did rev cloud. I'm going to keep the same settings that I already had. Just click freehand. Then I just start selecting. I think it is smart enough. Oh, you can also not click. You can just drag. I don't like that. I normally, a majority of all of my stuff, I draw a shape and apply the rev cloud to it. I never do the freehand stuff. And I think it automatically knows to close on itself. So if you hover near the end, it knows to close it up. Cool. Any questions on that one? Yeah. Yeah.
With AutoCAD, who's going to AutoCAD? Or like the skeleton of a model and then refine it and illustrate it.
Yeah, so in early years for me personally, she's asking if you how you use AutoCAD and what method you might refine it. So I used to do for hand drawing, I knew AutoCAD just well enough to go in, and so that I knew the scale of everything being proper and perfect, I would go and draw just the bones. Like I get my site plan, like the boundary, I get my roads and my walkways and building footprints and all those down, so I know they're all the exact size and thing they're supposed to be. And then I'd plot that out and I'd put trace over the top and use it to make my final drawings. And then the same way it can go in rendering tools as well, Illustrator, Photoshop. I'm hoping we have time in the semester that we're going to show you how to get things out of AutoCAD to PDF and those kind of things, but we'll also attempt to show you a little bit of some funner tools to get to Photoshop and Illustrator and be able to take them in there and manipulate them. Cool. Okay, next one is, did I skip patches? No, I did. Okay, array. This one's gonna be really helpful for the assignment. So array might be a little bit more confusing. There's way more settings associated with it at least. But we're going to start with group and block. So like I told you, this one is a group or a block, right? Because all these line work are stuck together. Group is just really dumbed down, similar to any other program, right? It's just clumping things together. It's not ideal though in AutoCAD if you were taking, say you have a big plan and you have a billion trees on it of the same tree, you do not want it to be a billion groups. You want it to be a block. A block is a fancy, nice, refined AutoCAD version of a group that allows you to place a singular item. And then once you've done that, you can then modify one of them and it will modify all of them. And it makes for a smaller file because it's referencing images and information rather than physically having the line work copied a billion times over like a group. So we're gonna start off by making, I think we said group for here, because we're only having one tree here. We're gonna select all the line work that's in here of all these bits and pieces. The outside skirt of this should be locked, so deselect those if you want, and your little cursor in the middle. So either use your blue or green blocks or individually select. That would kind of suck because there's a lot of nitty gritty pieces in there. So make sure that you get this whole branch segment selected, okay? Once you've got all of that selected and the things you don't want deselected, info boxes, okay, all you do is type in group or G, enter, and it has no other things except it says an unnamed group has been created with the number of objects is in it, 84 objects, okay? If yours did not say 84, you did not select all the things you're supposed to. And you'll find that out later whenever there's a straggler piece. So now, ooh, I got bonus things because I selected, yours should say 83. So I'm gonna show you how to ungroup as well. Type in ungroup, and ungroups things. I have this bonus friend selected, so I'm gonna make sure escape, nothing is selected. Draw my blue box. Select this, type in G, enter, and it will be less angry. Cool. So it gives it a grip point in the dead center and gives you a little box around the end. Outside, just like any other program that has groups, Word, PowerPoint, whatever. Then we're going to do the array puller command. So array has path, polar, and rectangular. It has a bunch of functions within one. You can start array polar by typing in array, or if you know which one you already, so there's rectangular, polar, and path. You can get to all of them from array, but if you know which one you want, just go ahead and go to it if you want to. So array polar, enter. It says specify the center point of the array. So the goal is to fill this tree without having to draw all of those pieces again. And if you copy and rotate, that's also kind of a pain in the butt to have to get them. I want them evenly distributed and perfectly filled without me redrawing and moving around a billion things. So I've drawn a circle in here to make things easier and this grip point. So we're going to choose that center point. Polar is the circular based one. So it arrays around a circle. So click. If you look, there are a billion trees now. You should only have 3 branches. So if you look, array polar settings, the number of items should be 3. Between is 120, which is degrees between each of your elements, and fill is 360. So it says how many items, how much space should be between them, and how far do I go around. How you change these is the second you've started your array, you get an array creation tab up at the top. So all of this is to modify an array. So items is that one that you've got down here, items. So we're going to click in there, 3, enter. And you can do all of these things down in the command bar. This is one of those things I like doing up at the top. So if you want to play either way, take your pick, whichever's easiest. Between, so sometimes it's smart enough to know if you tell how many items, it'll automatically default to a fill, to fully fill it. So once I put in the 3, it filled the entire thing. You need to modify where the base point is, those kind of things. There's all sorts of other settings. Normally you shouldn't have to mess with these things too much. The only downside of array is once you have arrayed the item, you no longer have the item. It is now an array. It is one entity of its own. So array, to get out of the array, you just push escape or enter. whenever you're done with all the settings associated with it. The same with getting out of any command, escape or enter gets you out, and you're done with those settings. Those settings don't come back until you click on an array, then you've got the stuff at the top, but it does not start the command prompt stuff. Does that help? Cool. So next one, we're gonna use array rectangle. I'm gonna give you a second to attempt to do this one on your own. So, oh, alas. So for use array rectangle to make trees filled. So imagine these as a nice little plaza with a bunch of tree wells that need trees in them. So you're gonna draw a tree for these specifications. So it needs to be a 15-foot radius, just a circle with a cross or a circle in the middle. Then you're going to group those things with block rather than group. So you're gonna use the block command. And I'm going to make a dummy one of those. So circle 15, sorry, I should be slower, CI, enter, click. I'm gonna just click it anywhere and then I'll move it where it belongs in a second. 15, enter. And then I'm gonna just draw a quick cross to go in the center, or a circle. We'll do a circle. I'm just gonna start my circle, hover over the edge, snap to the middle, and then do like 0.75. So whatever drawing tool you choose to get a tree together in some way or form. I'm going to select both items. Simply type block. So block has a little bit of extra info. It lets you choose. You get to name it, which is nice. So we're going to name it, I think it says tree, is all it asks. Yeah, I call it tree. Tree. The next thing that you get to choose, you want to make sure annotative is a no, scale uniformly, just leave these items pretty much alone most of the time. You might play with them later. Yes, you want to convert the objects you have selected to a block. The only thing you might mess with is specify your base point. So with the group, it automatically made that grip point in the center. If it's not something that you want to grab from the center regularly, then it's not the best spot for that grip point. You get to choose it. So if I click specify on screen, and then you can also leave a description. So if you have lots of things, you can put them in there. I'm going to push OK. Now it says specify insertion base point because I checked. I want to specify on the screen where the grip point is. I want to make sure that grip point is in the dead center of this tree. That's the most efficient for a planned tree, is to have it in the dead center. So I hovered for the snap and clicked in the center. Now, if you look and you select any part of those circles, you have a grip point in the middle that is a movable object at this point. They are friends with each other. They're connected. Okay. I'm going to move that into my box that has a little helpful guide. So you'd want to put it in the center of here. You would use your midpoint snaps. And then if you were to do this from scratch without that crosshair, extension creates these invisible lines, very similar. So you can see that invisible line that comes off of other snaps. That's what extension is. So you would use those to try and find the middle of this square, or you can draw polylines, any way to get to the middle. But so we're gonna just draw a tree. Do you have that part or no? Okay, so just a circle command, enter, click. Then I type in my amount, which is 15, enter. You can do anything. It can be polylines if you wanted to, or another circle. So if I just make a little, I'm going to turn ortho on. I can make a little crosshair if I wanted to. Doesn't even matter how big it is. I'm just really anal about it. If you wanted to take the time to draw the things and make a little cross, select it, move it, do all of those things. Or you can just draw a circle from the center. So if you get CI and hover, I gotta make sure my circle snap is on, my center snap is on. I hover over the outside and get that green circle. I could draw another circle on the inside, whichever method you want to make a circle. It does not matter, either or. Once you have those pieces, you select all the things for the pieces. You type in block. Good so far? Yeah.
Okay.
So then I'm gonna name it tree, which it might be angry at me because I've already named a block tree in this file. We'll see how it goes. I'm gonna make sure that specify on screen is selected, this box. Then, okay, I don't need to change anything else over here. Okay. It's mad because I already have one of these blocks. I'm gonna say yes, redefine it to what I'm choosing right now rather than what I chose later. Now I'm choosing, it says specify an insertion base point, which basically says, where does this grip point go for this object? So I'm gonna hover over the edge of the circle to find the center mark. And I get that center mark. Or if you made a cross, it's in the midpoint either way. And I click once. After that, it is now a block. It is done. It is a piece of its own. It should be one object. Got it? Yeah, sweet. Now you can move it from this, I have more than one. You can move it from the grip point. So you can, just the same way as the ends of polylines and things like that, you can click it and move it. You can also select it, type in the move command, enter, hover and find the grip point, click, and then still move it that way, whichever is comfortable for you. After that, there is a tiny little faint crosshair in here. If you want to use that, or you can use your snaps, whichever seems most efficient to you. You're just going to hover and get the middle of this box. That's all it is. I'm just going to click to the midpoint. Click. Bueno? Yes. So we all have a tree in first box. Good. So then we're going to use one of our array functions. So we want to copy that evenly in a grid pattern without having to copy all these things individually. So I'm going to select the object that I'd like to array. If I do array, it asks you if you'd like to choose the thing before or after. So if I choose array rectangle, I'm going to choose array by itself so you can see how you get to array rectangle or polar or path. So if I do array, enter, it says select the object. So this is my object that I want to make go all over the place, push enter, and I'm done selecting things. Now it asks you, do you want rectangle, path, or polar? For this one, we want rectangular. So click. And it makes a bunch of trees, right? You need to know the distance from centers to the next point. Thankfully, we provided those for you to make them sit where they belong. So if you look at the array rectangular settings, there are 3 columns of 3, right? So 3, 3, all 3. So I go up the same way as the first array polar. There's a bunch of settings up here for my array. I'm going to make sure each row and column is 3. That's my starting point. And then between needs to be 30. So that's 30 feet instead of degrees. Before we were working in degrees because it's polar. Enter. And then let's see, rows 3. So for this one, it's negative 30. You can see all of the trees going up. We want them to go down, so it's going to be a negative 30. Click. And once I've input all of those, if you've input these correctly and snapped everything perfectly to the center, it should be a tree is in the dead center of each one of those tree wells perfectly with all 9 of them. Bueno? State goes into locks easily.
Yeah,
Just a heads up for assignment 1, if you check out a lot of yours, if you have feedback in your rubric, you'll have most likely on the JPEG or PNG that you submit. I tried to, if I gave you some notes on some big gaps or overlap spots, things like that, I tried to highlight where those spots were. So there's either red circles or red boxes that kind of show you where I've noticed that you weren't, maybe you didn't get your snaps just right or something and your line work's a little off or wonky. So whenever you check out your assignments, check the JPEG or PNG if you have feedback, and there might be some extra feedback on where you can fix if you want to resubmit and grab those points back. So Jess, are you at a better spot or not?
yeah. I have one more question, but I think we're good.
So I noticed a couple of you, either your trees didn't have a center mark or they were the wrong size, something like that. So the beauty of block is that you can modify them without having to modify all of them. You choose one to edit and it will edit all of them for you. So if you look in the top bar and go to insert, every file stores every block you create in that file. So if I click insert, there's a drop down. So this tree that's over here, that's the tree I placed in your mirror assignment. Tick and tree well, those are different blocks that I made in here as well. So this tree is the one that I just made. If I click it, I can add a brand new one at any point. So you can, all your blocks get stored as special data in your file. So anytime you make one in there, it is permanently in that file and part of it, unless you purge it out, which is something y'all don't know how to do yet. So that's helpful. So now that your line work is part and your block is part of an array, you'll want to go snag one of those in order to edit it. It'll probably be easier. So if you go to insert, do the insert drop down on the far left, click the tree and place it anywhere, doesn't matter where. Once you have it, you want to select it. And if you right click, you'll see there's lots of options that have been hiding from you. So a lot of the tools that you regularly use for drawing and modifying, they're in here. So if you find that this might be an efficient method for you to explore on your own time, they're in here. But the options we're looking at are reset block, block editor, and edit block in place. So we're going to do block editor. Click it on that drop down. If you right click on the block, let me leave it real quick. So you select the block that you placed in from insert. So insert tab at the top. Yeah, trying to help you out here, so quit panicking. Your panic is making it difficult for you to hear. So insert, then you do insert under the block category. You see it says block. These are all different block related things. Insert, and you go find the tree that you've already made. Click it, click once out here, so that you have that object sitting out there. Select that block, right click, and you're going to go to block editor. You can also double click on blocks and it will automatically open this. So now you've got your tree in here. If you would like to change the size of your circle, for instance, you can click a grip, just like we did in the first class, click a grip, and you can type in to make sure it is 15. So if I click that grip, mine was already 15, so it didn't modify it. So if I type in 20 when that grip is selected, it's now 20. Click that grip, and I type in 15, it's now 15 again. So if you need to modify the size of it, if you need to add a center point, any line work you add here will add it to your block. So if I do a circle, I make sure my snaps are turned on. I drop down with my center, click back in, I hover over the outside. You get that green circle, click in the middle, and I'll draw a circle, say it's 0.75, whatever, enter. So now I have a circle sitting in here. So now I have a center point if I didn't already have one, right? So once I am finished making modifications to my block, anything that I do in here, you could even draw, like, say I was to take polyline and draw it any which direction. Draw something random in here. If you go to the top right, it says close block editor with a big green check. You select that. You say, yes, save the changes to tree. Top selection point, save the changes that I just made. Now you see every single symbol has the lines and the changes that I made to it when I was in the block editor. So I've got that weird line, I have a new circle, all of those things. So if I select it again, so I'm going to redo block editor. You can either select it, right click, go to block editor. You can also double click and it'll say edit block definition. And I say, okay, yes, edit this one. And it also brings you to the exact same spot. Both of those get you there. I'm going to select this line I don't want there, and I'm going to delete it. I'm going to delete the circle because I have a center point already. So I modified it back to exactly what I want it to be. I'm going to say close block editor, top right corner, big check mark, save the changes to tree. Now I look and all of the trees are back to normal again. Collectively changes all of them. So everyone's tree should be happy, meeting the requirements, 15 feet with their marks. Cool? Okay, so hatches, there's already a hatch sitting in this file. If you look at the mirror, there are 2 hatches that I've done in here already. You'll notice these are intricate patterns, but they're not comprised of simple line work. If you select them, they are one selection. It's not a bunch of lines. And this is not the third group. They're a hatch. So you'll notice when I selected this hatch up here, it says hatch editor at the top. And it starts giving you some options to mess with those things. So hatches are really efficient ways to where you don't have to draw a pattern from scratch and copy it and have lots of it, and group it and trim it and do all these things to it. There are default patterns that are sitting in AutoCAD for you. The downside of them is on slower computers or computers that don't have the greatest graphics card, hatches make your computer very angry. So if you have lots of them, that aren't in very clean, nice, perfect line work, they get angry quickly. This is one of the reasons why some of you had comments about you most likely will have to fix some of your assignment 1 stuff to make assignment 2 stuff work properly. We're going to have you hatch your detail. So if your details line work is not perfectly met up with things, it can make the hatches very angry. And so you'll learn that very soon, and it is a fun lesson to learn. So we're going to start with the first one, hatch. Type in hatch, enter. And so if you look at the top, you've got your hatch editor or hatch creation. The 2 main ways to make a hatch are pick point and select. So if you look at the first 2, select means you're selecting a current boundary that you've made. That boundary must be perfectly close. You have to use your endpoint snap so flawlessly and perfect that it is immaculate. Any gaps, it's angry. So if I select these squares, for instance, and open my properties box, which we went over last time, so properties, and it opens this box. You scroll all the way down to the bottom of this box. It says miscellaneous closed. Yes, that means this is a perfect closed figure. If there is even the smallest break, the hatch is angry. So I'm going to close this bad boy. So we're going to do hatch. Hatch is also H, enter, and it'll do it for you. Pick point basically is like very similar to extend, like it's like pouring water into an area and it has to extend out to those edges. So if you've drawn an area that's something irregular that you haven't made a perfect shape, like for instance, this is very irregular, it will find the edge of every single polyline and thing and try and find that boundary. This will probably enrage it from the gaps and things. But it tries to find the boundaries. If you hover, it tries to give you a preview, which is another reason why it slows down your computer. So you'll see it tries to go perfectly to all those edges. I really like to avoid that method of placing it in. You can use it, but it's one of those things where if your line work isn't perfect, this will be the one way of making everything angry. So select is ideal, where you select an object very similar to what we did with RevCloud. You select something that's already drawn. So I'm going to select this first box, and it is going to fill it. I am going to say enter, and it closed it. Don't say enter, but you can say enter. If you say enter, you can select, anytime you select the hatch, it automatically brings up the hatch editor. So the next part is choosing the pattern. So concrete hatch, the standard concrete hatch, it's listed in here as AR conc. And I'm going to scroll in this list with the drop down. So you see AR CONC. These are pretty standard abbreviations, so you'll get used to them. Those little triangles and dots, that's for when you're cutting through concrete. The next part you want to control is the scale and the rotation. So for this one, we don't care about rotation, but we care about the scale of the hatch. So if you go to this column, here's the angle, that's the rotation. And then here is the scale. So this number needs to be 2. Enter. So I think if you hover, will it say scale? Hatch pattern scale if you hover over it, so you'll know which one you're at. So make sure that's 2. And it should generally look like this. Okay. Then we're going to do one that has a rotation. So I'm going to start hatch. I'm going to select an object. Select my hatch. Go down to the drop down for this one after I place that hatch. And I'm going to go seeking the earth hatch. So this is the standard hatch for earth. And it is invisible because it's so tiny. So the scale for this one says set to 15. So we're going to set that scale to 15. enter so that it is better visible. And then one way in construction documents that some offices use and some standards use is if your earth hatch is 45 degrees versus if it's straight up and down. One means that it's been constructed and man-made and compressed, and others mean it's natural grade that no one's messed with. So we're gonna practice making it at a 45-degree angle. So you can either do the slider, click and drag, or you can click over here and type in 45. So if it's just static or whatever, you can go dragging it until something looks nice, versus if you want something to be a perfect 45 degree, then you type it in. I'm gonna push escape. You can hatch more than one thing at a time with the same hatch, but then you have to learn how to remove them. So if I've got a sand hatch, for instance, I'm gonna do hatch. I can select this square and this square all at the same time, and it'll fill both of them with the exact same hatch. And then if you'd like to remove it, because obviously two of these should not be the same, you go to the top left where that pick point and select were. There's now a remove. If I select it, and then I go select the one I'd like to remove, select that boundary, click, it removes it. So select, keeps adding them, remove, removes your selections. So you can keep adding spaces. So if you've got like a plan or something that you're using the same hatch repeatedly in, you can do all of those areas with a hatch and not have to redo it over and over again. It also makes your file more happy in terms of how much processing it has to do if you don't make a million extras. So I'm going to select the one that I made here, and I need the sand hatch, which is AR sand. It says scale 1, which is already there, and rotation 0, it's already there. That one's good to go as is. Look, it's just a bunch of stippled dots. My next one is solid. Attach. Select. I'm going to choose solid. And there are no angle or rotation for that one, obviously, because it's a solid abyss. I push escape. So all 4 of those are done. So I'll give a few minutes for everyone to make sure they got those knocked out. And if they have any questions. Everyone good with hatch? You're good, Jess?
Yep, we're good.
Everyone good? Yes. All the way to the top. All the way to the top. It hides the blank. Alrighty. So the last thing you're going to do in order to submit this exercise to Canvas is I'm going to show you another version of zooming in and out, which seems silly. So the scroll that you can use on your mouse to go in and out. You can also type the commands to have more control. So zoom, enter. And you have a bunch of different options. Window, for instance, if I zoom out and I choose a window to zoom in. So if I click from here to here for window, it will zoom in to make sure all those things are sitting in that window. So that is what you'll want to use for your submission. So zoom, enter, and we'll use the window where we get to draw a window. You'll zoom out and you can draw a window from here to here. And this is what you will use to do your screenshot for your submission. Your screenshot, if you remember, if you do. So this time I'd prefer if we just did the JPEGs or PNGs. I noticed that the PDF method that a couple people ended up using makes it really like low res and really difficult to see. So use your Windows key and the print screen on your keyboard. It will automatically do a little picture just like on your phone and go to your file explorer. And in your file explorer in the default pictures, it will make a folder that says screenshot. So if I do print screen with my Windows key, take a screenshot, file explorer, I go to my pictures and go to screenshots. There is now an image from today right here. And I will move this to my folders on OneDrive or wherever I store them. I will name it something super pretty based off of what the deliverables say. And that is how you will submit that. using Windows print screen, and you will make sure everything is perfectly in the window and all visible using Zoom window. Oh. Another tool that you can use is Zoom Extents. It helps whenever you have really big files. One shortcut is if you double click the scroll wheel on your mouse, you double click that, it'll zoom to the extents of all your drawings. You see mine gets really angry, and it's because I hid something in the file to purposely make it angry. So ideally, you zoom out here, I have line work that's making it really angry to zoom out to. So this is a helpful,
Is it exercise or an exercise?
the Zoom part, or this whole thing. This is in class is exercise. Anything that is purely in class we walked through, that's exercises. So exercise 2, this is exercise. This is exercise 2. Exercise 2, the one we're following along to. So you'll see in Canvas, there's the pictures of each finished, completed object should be in Canvas. So this is where you're spinning it to. Okay. So you should be using your Zoom window, make it nice and pretty, name it nice and pretty, all of those things. Cool. Once you've managed to get everything saved off, make sure you open up your assignment 1 detail drawing in AutoCAD. So pull that up. What? Yeah, wherever you store it. Or if you don't currently have it on this computer, which is a problem, make sure that you're using OneDrive for all the assignments in here, whether it's on the computer's File Explorer or if you're doing it on the internet. Either way, ideally, you want to always have access to these files so you can edit them at home and things like that. If you do manage to download AutoCAD, or if you hot computers, you need to have access to the files that you create. So use OneDrive in some way or form, or a flash drive, whichever method it is that you're going to use to keep up with your files. If you don't have access to it right now, you can go to Canvas and you can download your past submission if you have it. So you could go find your submission, download that. Cool. Start with layers, okay? So if you go to the top of your home tab where it says layer properties. So if you have familiarity, you click the box that says layer properties right here, this one. If you have familiarity with Photoshop or any Adobe product for the most part, there's layers built in. The same thing for GIS and those things to organize and set up your layers. If you look in your exercise, for instance, you'll see that there's a list of layers that you didn't currently have access to. The reason why you can't select a lot of things is because I've placed specific things on a layer, locked it, and then exited you out and gave you a different layer to start drawing on so that you are never able to modify the things that I've drawn. Before you didn't know how to access them, so you couldn't get to it in the first place, making it easy for you to not destroy things accidentally. So I'm going to go to my detail drawing and go ahead and open the layers in that one. So I'm going to click layer properties button up here. This one is one of those ones you normally have docked all the time. So if you remember this dark bar that's thick on the edge, if you click it, drag it, you get to move it wherever you'd like. I like to dock mine on the left edge. So I hold it over there until it makes that outline and then let go. And I resize it so that I can see everything. I'm going to make it extra large for right now to see absolutely everything. You'll see there's a scroll bar associated with everything on the edges. So if you can't see something right now, you will be able to. I'm going to make mine really large so it's easier to see. So there are a lot of facets and pieces of, my file has a lot of stuff in it that should not be in here. One second. For me. There we go. That'll look like yours. So This is your layer properties. Currently, everything you've done is drawn on layer 0. 0 and def points are the 2 layers that automatically get made by AutoCAD every time it opens. These 2 things you do not delete. I'm pretty sure you cannot delete.
Why would it say you don't have a depth point layer?
The def point will automatically make itself if you use dimensions. So for your assignment, for instance, I had a bunch of dimension lines to show you. The second those type of things are made, then that layer is made.
Oh, we shouldn't have one.
So you most likely will not have one unless you've clicked and played with other toys and tools in there. But when those do occur, you are not deleting either of those. Ideally, you don't really draw on 0 for the most part. I use it as like scratch paper. So your first is over here, the same stuff. First bits and pieces of your layer management is you close it, move it, and dock it the same way as that properties box, all on that dark bar, okay? That's how you control that. The next part over here on your far left, and that helps on the Canvas exercise 2, I have this really pretty diagram where I've laid it out and numbered it of what each thing is to make your life easier later if you've forgotten as well. On this side, when you have more files stuffed inside of a file and all sorts of complicated things, over here is where you'll see lots of extra layers, files, and stuff. You will not have to worry about that for right now. I'm pretty sure, yeah. So if you want to close this portion so you don't have to look at it, it's 2 double arrows. You don't need that for right now. That's when you get a little bit more complicated files. Next part is this column, this first column where you get a check mark and then the little sheet of paper. Whichever one is checked is your current drawing layer. So if you double click on a layer, that becomes your next one. You currently have no other layers. So whichever one you double click on, that check moves it to, that's the one you're actively drawing on. If I double click on def points, for instance, if you look up here on your interface in the home tab, it's now says def points because that's the one I'm drawing on. If I double click on the 0, it's going to change at the top of the screen and it's going to say 0. That's the layer I am now actively drawing on. The next one is the name of your layer. So I'm going to use my scroll all the way over. Your name of the layer, you get to choose this anytime you add layers. So if you look at this top bar, we'll get to all of them, but this little sunshine one up here, 3 pieces of paper and a sunshine. If you click it, it creates a new layer. I'm going to just put test for right now. Layer test. For your assignment, you'll have a required set of layers that you need to add. So I did test. I'm going to click outside in the abyss and it makes test. If I double click on it, that will be my active layer that I would start drawing on. The next one is on off feature. So, I will say if there are any of these elements that aren't currently showing, if you run into any of these columns not showing, let me know, and we can make sure we pull it up. So if you right click in this top bar, it gives you a list of all of the column potentials. So right click. So if you're missing anything, this is where you turn them on. Okay. It's from this list that goes snaps. So the first one is on off. It's just a light bulb. So if you look, this line work is drawn on 0. If I turn off the little light bulb and click the light bulb, it will turn off everything that's on layer 0. The one next to it is freeze. I can actually make these bigger so you can read it. Freeze does the same thing, but freeze allows your file to run a little bit faster. So if you've got really complicated layers and things like that, you want to freeze things to make your file run faster. Y'all don't have to worry about that right now. Either of these are perfectly effective for turning things on and off for you. Pick one, but if they're both turned off, turning one of them on will not make your line work appear. So choose one and make sure that if something is missing, both light bulb has to be yellow and the sun needs to be shining on freeze. The next is lock. That one's pretty obvious. I've been locking you out of all the layers you have for your exercise. So if you were to go to your exercise and unlock things, so in my exercise drawing, also I've been navigating between tabs. So when you have multiple AutoCAD files open, Those are the tabs up at the top, just like a lot of other similar programs. But if I go over here and I've got assignment lock, which is what I named it, you'll see there's a little lock next to it because I've stopped you from being able to click and move those things. They still show, they're still visible. And that little lock shows up when you hover over things. That's how you lock things. Next one is plot and print. If you select this, it won't make a difference while you're drawing, but if things magically start disappearing when you start printing outside of AutoCAD later, this is where it could have done wrong. Next one, color. This is what you're going to be doing with your detail. You're going to make layers based off of your assignment. So there's a whole slew of, let's see, I think there's like 4 or 5 maybe layers that we've asked y'all some basic layers to do. Let's see. So these are the layers that you're being asked to make. So say it's L cap. We're going to start with that one. So I'm going to do the little sunshine and add a new layer. I'm going to call it L. So standard, it depends on what office you're at and those kind of things, but a standard in the industry is that like your layers all start with an L for landscape. Architects will have A or AR or something of that variation. Each engineer has their different acronym. And then there is a shorthand for most typical layers. You're not using entirely typical layers right now, but get in the habit of you're going to do L, and a lot do all caps. Some do all undercase. It just really depends on where you're at. We're just doing all caps. So underscore cap. And then I just click once out anywhere. And I have that new layer. My cap, all of these, we're just requiring that you choose a color to differentiate each of these. If you look at my stuff, they're all different colors. So the goal is to get your items to be different colors. I'm going to fix things so that it will end up being like yours. Look, it looks like yours. So the cap, we want it to be, you click on the color and it'll bring up a color box. We just want to use index colors. So if you hover any of these ones, all 9 of these, if you hover over it, it says index color and it's 1 through 9. Any of those, and just make sure each layer is different. So it's whatever you'd like it to be. So say the cap, I'm going to make it 4, cyan, click it, push OK. So it's going to say cyan, anything on this layer from that point on is going to be this color. The next one is line type. So if I click that, it brings up a line type box. Currently, I have things in mind that I'm guessing you don't, because I've drawn other lines and loaded new ones. So if you see it says load, you'll start with continuous. That's just a regular solid line. If you do load, there's a whole dot list of different types of lines that are standard for drawing that AutoCAD stores for you, very similar to hatches. So things like a center line, the standard long dash, short dash to mark the center of things. Which is what I used in y'all's image. That's in here. Or the rebar that you drew individual pieces, you can actually just designate a line type. So one of your things is draw a rebar, and then you're going to be assigning it onto the layer that has a dashed line. So it makes it dashed, and we'll get there in a second. So you would click one of these that you needed to load, say it's dashed, push OK. I've already put it in here, so it got angry. You push OK and it would go straight to this if you didn't already have it. So then dashed is here and I would push OK and you can see it now says the line type for this layer is dashed. Nothing is currently on this layer, so it's making nothing change over here. You have to be able to place things on that layer. So I'm going to go ahead and move something there. So if I select the cap line work, yours might be in a lot of pieces or it could be a single rectangle. Really depends on how you drew things, but whatever your line work for this top cap is, go ahead and select it. And then you're going to use this drop down at the top, click. And now you'll see that cap is sitting in there. And if I hover over it, it's going to change that line work to be whatever is happening that I've set in the layers properties manager. So if I've set it to be dashed and cyan, that's what's going to happen. The second I click this, it has moved the line work to that layer. So if I click any other line, it says 0 because it's on the layer 0. If I select this, it is on L cap now. My cap I do not want to be dashed. So I'm going to go back to my layers properties manager. I'm going to click my dashed and I'm going to choose continuous. Push OK. And if you closed your layers property, it's this button again. So that one's gonna be continuous. Next is line weight. For this class, you won't be messing with this, but it's distinguishing a width or how fat lines should be drawn, how many millimeters. Next one is transparency. I don't tend to mess with this one personally either, but it's just the same as transparency in any other program. You put in a value and it fades that line. Some of these things do not appear in model space. They only appear once you've plotted something and printed it outside. Next one is, this is viewport freeze. Learn about this one later. This is related to printing. And the last one is description. If you want to add descriptions, if you click in the box, you should be able to start typing, I think. Let's see. There it is. Double clicking or waiting indefinitely. It's a single click and a hesitated wait. You can put in descriptions for your layers. You don't really need to do that for this stuff, but it's for your own information. And then last is up here. You learned making a layer, creating a layer with this one. And the next one, this is freezing. I believe it's making a frozen layer. That's what it does, or not. Oh, so you won't be using this one because if you notice, it changes this over here. This one symbol is a snowflake instead of a sunshine. These are printing settings, so you don't need it. To delete one, it's the X. So adding a sunshine, we skip the freezy one because you freeze from here in the column. This is deleting with the big X. And all of these things, because this is a lot to remember, is on your assignment thing. It is in your exercise 2 information about layers. This diagram and what each thing does is on there for when you forget, because it's inevitable. Yeah.
Are we submitting anything about the layers like that exercise?
What you're going to be doing is your assignment will be that each layer, each line within your detail will be on a layer. So you'll go through and start making new layers. So LCAP, I think, what was it? Another one is LCMU, so construction masonry unit. CMU, so I'm going to put LCMU. I'm going to have to define it to be a color of some sort. Say it's red, random selection here. That one's probably going to be solid as well. So I'll go through and make those. I'll go through and select. So these are the CMU. That's not a CMU. We're going to ignore that. So I select the CMU, right? And some of you will find that the way that you drew your detail will make this a little bit difficult, which is why doing this in class for a bit will be super helpful, so that I can help you as well as Jess can go around and Sam can help you guys adjust or learn tips for adjusting your line work to make it easier to move these things. Generally, you want to draw line work and things on the layer that it belongs in, and whenever it's an individual item, like this is an individual brick on the edge, right? Like that's a brick. So I don't want to use multiple lines to use for like more than one brick. A single brick might need to be moved or removed from a detail. So I don't want to draw it with one continuous line for many bricks because I'd have to edit it and it would get awful, which some of you have tried. Getting assistance and help modifying those, or if you've gotten a little bit more practice just drawing a new rectangle and copying it a couple times, could be easier than modifying what you've already drawn. So like I've selected my CMU. I go to the drop down, put it on CMU. Now that's red. So you're going to go through and open your assignment 1 or assignment 2, sorry. Open your assignment 2 and you'll start the process. There's a couple things in here. We've asked that you make these layers. You assign all your stuff to different layers. It might help to use the reference from assignment 1 to know what CMU. You're going to make a hatch and you are going to hatch it based off of, where is it? This image. So we've given you a reference image. You're going to try and make it look like this with the hatches. So some of these hatches you used in your exercise and you know the name of if you go look at your exercise. There's a couple of these that you might need to scroll through the hatch a little bit and find the pattern that looks close to it. And then you'll ideally go through and just mess with the scale freely. We are not looking that you have the exact number lining up exactly with the scale and rotation with what we're presenting. The goal is just to get it to look as close as possible whenever it comes to the hatch. So whatever scale this is, get it relative, get it close, make sure it's the right named hatch, and it gets close to it. And try and get it to look like this in the process. So you'll make a hatch layer, you'll place those things on it. You'll be replacing the rebar that you drew. You'll delete those old ones and you'll draw a single 2 lines and you'll place them on a layer that has a dashed line type rather than a solid line type. So go ahead and start this process so that if you have questions, if you run into any issues, let me know. We'll run through this we'll do about half an hour of that. And then I will go over the second part, which is tree blocks, so that you get a chance to start that and do that as well if you need any help with that stuff as well, so that you have free for all time to work on those things. Cool. Are there any questions upstairs or in here? Yeah, so any item that needs to get moved to a layer, you simply select the drawing. You can do 2 different ways. You can, if you're drawing from scratch, you can go up here, see where it says test. I can choose CMU, for instance, and if I wanted to start drawing things, it'll all be on the CMU layer. If I already have something drawn and I'd like to place it on the CMU layer, I select an object or multiple objects, doesn't matter. And then I go to that same drop down, see it says 0. It's telling you that these things are on the layer 0. If I even open up that properties box, it even tells you it is on layer 0. If you do that drop down and then select CMU or CAP or whatever, now it is permanently on that layer. It is part of it, and you'll see it adjust to the properties of the layer as well. Okay. I'm going to take a stab at going over the second part, so that you have a little bit of time in class to be able to ask questions for that one separate as well. This one, it looks like a good hunk of you have a majority of it fleshed out, so that's good, and you've gotten a chance to ask some questions. Feel free to email, Canvas message, those kind of things when you're working on these things. And if you run into kinks, ask your friends, check the resources given to you. Let us know if you need help though. So I'm going to move into the second one just to describe it so you get the chance to start working on that one. Okay, so the next one is just you're going to make a couple of blocks of planned trees, similar to that simple circle one that we made earlier. Array is very helpful for this one. So what you're going to do is you're going to have a layer for each tree that you're going to draw. You're going to have 4 trees that you make. They come from different levels, basically. So we've got the really, really simple ones. This is the first level of them. These are really, really simple relatively. So things like Rev Cloud, for instance, would finish off 1 or 2 of these without any adjustments. You could literally make a circle, Rev Cloud it, and it would pretty much be done besides the circle in the middle. Things like that. Then you'll do one from this section. This is where array will be very helpful. There's no reason you should need to draw when you see all these little elements. Array is your friend. So you'll make a circle, sit one of these patterns on the edges, and use array puller to try and fill that out. We'll do one more, one crazy one from here. It does not have to be exactly identical perfect, especially for this section. The goal is to get close and the general concept. We're not having you trace these, obviously, so it doesn't have to be too crazy. But one from each of these, and then one of your own making. I pulled up like a random example of some hand drawn ones. So if you look, there's some simple ones that are in there up here at the top, and then you can do some crazy ones if you wanted. The point is that when they look crazy, you only have to draw a very small sliver of something. You don't have to draw a lot of lines, and then you array it and it does the work for you. So some of them look a little more intimidating than they are. So possibly attempt one of the simple ones and then attempt a hard one before class is over so you get some chance to get some help on it. But you're going to be making 4 trees, and then you'll just block each of them with a name. So level 1, level 2, level 3, and then custom with your initials or something. And then each layer, just like your current detail, different color for that. So each tree will be a different color. Other than that, make sure your file is set to the units. So you'll start a brand new file. You'll do at the top. Let me go over here. You'll do a brand new file from scratch, top, open, from scratch. You're gonna type in that unit, same way you did for your detail, but because trees in plan view are plan items, we're gonna be working in feet, not inches. So you go to feet, and then it'll be in decimal. Details, inches, architectural, plans, feet, decimal. We'll start ingraining that in your brain. It's a good standard. So that's how you'll set up your stuff. After that, it's just drawing circles and the stuff in them, practicing Array and RevCloud. I'm going to start doing research on RevCloud for it being uncooperative. So experiment with RevCloud and Array and try and get some of those tree symbols started for the next 30 minutes until class is done. Cool. Any questions?